Welcome back to SwitchStars, my name's Luke, and in today's Before You Buy review we're checking out a new retro-inspired shooter with Forgive Me Father, a game which harks back to the Doom shooters of yesteryear, putting an Eldritch spin on the classic formula as you fight your way through horrifying hordes of enemies as either a priest or a journalist. I've always been a fan of classic shooters, but how does this one hold up, and is it worth your time and cash? Well, drop a like, subscribe for more Switch content, and let's find out. So the story with this one then, and the game gives you two different characters to play as, the first being a priest and the second a journalist. However, both of these followed the exact same narrative, with them receiving a letter from a family member calling them to return to the hometown to respond to a request for help. Upon arrival, however, they find the town deserted, in place of its residents, Eldritch abominations with a thirst for blood, and despite their unassuming professions, the two take up arms to defend themselves and seek out the source of the corruption. Now, the intro to the game is presented with a cool animated cutscene, and I really like the Paper Mario-esque hand-drawn art style in this one. However, right from the get-go, it's apparent that the texture resolutions really suffer on the Switch. From here on in though, the game's story unfolds through in-game collectibles, and to be honest, I didn't really think this worked too well for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because it's a fast-paced shooter and stopping to read dialogue every 2 minutes breaks the pace of the game, and secondly because, again, these low-res visuals don't do the images any favours, and the text size is tiny in some of them, so I imagine anyone playing in handheld mode would have a tough time reading them. For these reasons, I didn't really get invested in the story, and in most levels didn't even bother to read any of the collectibles, but it's there if you've got the patience and perhaps a magnifying glass handy, I suppose. Moving on to the gameplay then, Forgive Me Father is pretty much your standard Doom-like retro shooter when it comes to the basic setup, and each of its levels has you blasting your way through enemies, hunting down coloured keys to open the way forward, with the occasional jumping puzzle or arena fight thrown into the mix for good measure. It's a classic formula that works pretty well for the most part, there's a decent amount of variety to levels, and while enemy variety is relatively simple with a mixture of ranged and melee enemies, combat is enjoyable enough with a decent pace to it, which at times can become quite hectic. Now when it comes to weapon variety, you begin the game with a pistol but steadily improve your arsenal, picking up your standard shotgun and machine gun combo along the way, as well as a few more exotic firearms. But where the game really shines is in its upgrade system, which lets you improve these weapons, such as giving you the option to dual wield pistols, switch out your standard knife for some throwing knives, or even transform your weapons into twisted Eldritch variants, and through killing enemies you'll earn the skill points to pump into this tree. It's a cool feature that offers up some accumulative progression to help you deal with ever-increasing numbers of enemies, and the only issue that I had with it is that you get a limited number of reset points, so you can't really try out different upgrades to find out which of them you enjoy playing before committing your points to them. Finally, each character comes with 4 active abilities, which, while unique to that specific character, essentially function the same, providing a source of healing or a way to stun or destroy enemies, and charges for these are gained through killing enemies. They don't really feel like game changers, but can really help you out in a pinch. Now, full disclosure here, I haven't actually played through the entirety of this one, and I've probably spent about 4 hours or so on it, playing partway through each character to see if there were any differences, and apart from the unique abilities, it appears that the playthroughs on both characters are essentially identical. Of what I did play though, gameplay is pretty solid and puts a modern twist on things with weapon recoil and the abilities enhancing the classic Doom formula, but getting into the reasons why I didn't end up completing this one, and I'm afraid these are twofold, with frustrations from both the Switch port itself as well as some of the gameplay decisions made by the developer. To start with though, the game has 5 difficulty settings, but you'd be hard pushed to play on anything but easy mode for your first playthrough due to the sheer amount of enemies thrown at you, which if you lack the accuracy, like me, you'll end up with very little ammo to work with, And also the fact that the game frequently pulls a fast one on you, teleporting you into rooms full of enemies or spawning them behind you, which not only feels cheap, but more often than not leads to you dying. And while each level usually has a quick save point, your current health is also saved and isn't restored on death, so you can end up completely screwing yourself over. The levels themselves, whilst having plenty of variety to them, also present their own frustrations, as the maze-like layouts in some of them can be an absolute chore to play through, with enemies spawning from all angles, and having to backtrack to a save point after completing a tough segment only adds to this frustration. The biggest issue with the game though lies in the Switch port itself, or more specifically, the visuals and performance of the Switch version. Like I said, the in-game visuals do look decent and I love the dark Eldritch aesthetic of them, but again it's that texture resolution which really lets them down, and the game suffers from the same issue as another game, BPM, bullets per minute, with a grain effect used to hide this low texture resolution, but coupled with this effect, everything just ends up looking very blurry, and they've also used dynamic texture resolutions which switch back and forth and only make things look worse. This combined with some incredibly dark environments really impacts on the playability of the game, and it's often difficult to even make out the landscape, let alone identify the enemies who will frequently appear out of nowhere and destroy you. Overall though, Forgive Me Father has a lot of good ideas going on, but as it currently stands, the performance and visual issues really made this Switch version impossible to enjoy for me, and it's a shame really, as on any other platform this one would have been a solid Doom clone with plenty going for it. As it is though, it's playable, but when you can't actually see what you're supposed to be shooting half the time, it kinda defeats the whole point of it. So while there appears to be plenty of content on offer here for your money, I'd say that the frustrations that I had with it far outweigh the value. With that said though, did you end up picking this one up? And if so, did you agree or disagree with anything that I've mentioned here today? Let me know down in the comments section below. But for now, drop a like if this one helped you out, subscribe for more Switch reviews and content, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.